Hello everyone, welcome to my channel. In today's video, we're going to make an envelope in a similar style to the one I did for St. Patrick's Day. I started by getting an A4 craft cardstock, and to create the side flaps, I'm going to score at 8 and at 22. Then I flip and score at 4 to create the top flap, and for the bottom flap, I score at 2 on the other side. And now, of course, I'm going to fold all of my score lines using the brayer to make them crisp. And now I'm going to cut those 4 sides. Now I'm rounding the corners. To create the background for the envelope, I'm going to use watercolor pencils. And this time I'm going to use red. And I decided that I want to create a striped pattern. And I had made myself a little scheme because I needed to figure out what kind of measurements I needed to use for the stripes. And basically what you need to do, you take, if you want to create the same pattern as I did, you start by taking 0.8 centimeters from the very edge of the paper. And I'm going to, of course, mark a line. And I'm sorry you're going to see my head quite a lot during this section. I didn't want to edit it out because I feel like too many cuts just bother me a little bit. I put a little X on that line because that line is going to be colored in. From that line that we just did, I'm going to measure 0.3 centimeters and mark another line with the pencil. Now from that 0.3 line, I'm going to take 0.8 again. And that's where the line where the pattern repeats, because we're going to start again. So again at 0.8. So basically your pattern is 0.8, 0.3, 0.8, and then you start again at 0.8. Now that last line I did is going to be filled in. I put a little X on it. And to show you the pattern a little bit better, I decided to fill up those lines so you can see how it's going to look once it's all drawn and finished. Okay, so the background is all drawn in, and now I'm filling in the lines. And now I'm using water, of course, to activate the watercolor pencils. So my background is all dry and now I'm using some distress ink in Vintage Photo to ink up the edges. And to give my envelope an even grungier look, I applied some ink onto my glass mat and activated it with water so I can sort of smoosh in some of the ink and create some distressing effect onto my envelope. Once the ink was dry, I also went in always with Vintage Photo and did some stamping all around the base. Probably on camera it's not very visible because I used Vintage Photo, which the color of it is quite similar to the craft cardstock, but in real life it's much more visible. So now I'm creating the element that is going to go behind my frame. Um, as you can see, I'm using this frame to sort of try it out. That was the frame that I originally wanted to use for the envelope, but then I decided that I did not like how it looked. So I decided to go with this paper. This is from Tim Holtz paper pad French Industrial. And then I'm gonna cut it to size to fit the envelope. And then I'm gonna use a circular die to create the actual frame. Okay, so the frame is ready and now I'm inking it up. And while I wait for the frame to dry, I'm going to create two more elements for my envelope. I took a piece of coffee dyed cardstock and I'm creating some stamped strips. And now I'm going to cut them out. So this is how the strip looks once it's cut into a little banner. And I'm going to show you how to make it. I measured 4.5 centimeters from the edge of the paper. And then, of course, I fold it in towards the back of the strip. And I'm going to do the same thing on the other side. Now, from those fold lines, I'm going to measure 1 centimeter, of course, for each side. And I'm going to fold towards the top of the strip, like that. And then I fold it in that way, and I give it a little bit of an angle. And then I cut the triangles on the edges to, of course, give it a banner look. And now I'm going to assemble the dies that I chose to create the eye catcher for the envelope. I used Tim Holtz tailored die set. I have been using this die set a lot because I absolutely adore how it looks. While I created this envelope, I also made another one using the same die set but in a completely different style. I'll probably post some pictures on Instagram or even on my community page here on YouTube. And of course, as far as the colors, I chose black. This hat also has some highlight areas, and I went with a dark gray. And for the ribbon, I chose red because, of course, red is the main color of this project. And I chose the same colors as well for the papillon. The base is with the dark gray, and for the center area, I used the same red that I used for the hat. Okay, so now I'm going to glue down all the elements. I want to give a lot of dimension to the decoration of this envelope. And so I used cardboard for everything. Usually I would use foam tape, but I really don't like using foam tape. I don't have a good relationship with it. And so I prefer to use cardboard. Um, you can see I put a little bit towards the center of the hat because I wanted to give it a sort of curved look. And I also did the same thing with the strips. And then I glued down the papillon as well on top of that strip. And now I am gluing down the sentiment. The letters are from another Tim Holtz die set. It's from the Vault. I think it's called World Travel, if I'm not mistaken. And I spelled out the word original. And I cut it out in black, but the O is in red because I wanted to give it a little bit of interest. I thought that if I did it all in black, it would have been a little bit boring. And then I decided that the bottom part needed something, so I took a piece of offcut from the frame and I stamped on the back. I have this stamp that looks like a tape measure. And then I added a little stamped label. And of course, I also added some more elements to the sides of the frame. I added some ephemera, some ripped pieces of paper. And I did a similar thing on the other side as well. I added the same elements. So now I'm going to create a string closure for my envelope. I started by stamping these two stamps on a piece of craft cardstock, and then I punched it with this circular punch. And then I'm going to add the eyelets and a string. I thought that the string was missing something, so I made a tiny little tag with an offcut of the frame, and I just tied it there to sort of give it a little bit of interest, and it felt more complete. So our envelope is done. I'm going to give you a little close-up. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please consider liking, subscribing to my channel, leave a comment down below, let me know what you think. I'll see you in the next video. Bye!